Zithrak sat alone in his chamber, staring at the report that the Galactic Council had just rejected. His pale blue skin looked almost gray in the dim light as he sighed deeply. 50 years of studying Earth, and for what? To be laughed at by his fellow council members. Humans are too primitive to be of concern, Council Leader Vexmar had said, waving a tentacle dismissively. They barely have a presence beyond their own moon. But Zithrak knew better. Humans were different from any species the Council had encountered before. They didn't follow the normal patterns of development. They were unpredictable, adaptive, and had a history filled with warfare that made even the aggressive Crawl seem peaceful. They will notice us eventually, Zithrak had warned. And when they do, we must be prepared. More laughter had followed. The council chambers had echoed with it, filling Zithrak with a deep sense of dread. He closed the file and placed a warning label on it before sending it to the General Archives, where it would likely gather digital dust for centuries. On Earth, Captain Frank Cooper looked out the viewport of the U.S. Intrepid, mankind's first true interstellar ship. Though they hadn't yet traveled beyond their own solar system, the ship represented a huge leap in human technology. The Intrepid used a new type of engine that bent space in ways scientists had only dreamed about 10 years ago. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual signal near Jupiter's orbit," said Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez, her eyes fixed on her monitor. Frank walked over and looked at her screen. "What kind of signal?" "Unknown, sir. It's not matching any known patterns. It's definitely not one of ours." Frank's heart beat faster. After years of searching the stars for signs of other life, could this be it? First contact with an alien civilization. "Alert Earth Command," he ordered. "And move us closer, but maintain safe distance. Let's see what we're dealing with." As the Intrepid changed course, the signal grew stronger. Back on Earth, Dr. Olivia Martinez was called in to help decode the mysterious transmission. As the leading expert in theoretical xenolinguistics, she had spent her career preparing for this moment. In her lab at the Global Space Agency headquarters, Olivia worked tirelessly, feeding the signal data through complex algorithms. "This is definitely artificial," she told her team. "The patterns are too precise to be natural space noise." After 16 hours of non-stop work, her computer began to identify repeating sequences that might represent words or numbers. "I think these might be coordinates," she said, pointing to a particular pattern on her screen. Her assistant, Ryan Patel, looked concerned. "Coordinates for what?" "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but they're definitely pointing to locations within our solar system." What Olivia didn't know was that she was looking at a Rexian battle fleet's invasion coordinates. The Rexians, a conquering species from a star system 200 light-years away, had been expanding their empire for centuries. Earth was simply the next target on their list. In the Rexian command ship, Admiral Kel Thor reviewed the information about the small blue planet they were approaching. "What about that warning file from the Galactic Council?" his second-in-command asked. Kel Thor snorted, a sound that expressed deep contempt in Rexian culture. "Council propaganda. They always exaggerate the threat of primitive species. Look at their technology level. They've barely achieved space travel." The file mentioned their adaptability and their warfare history. The officer persisted. "All species fight wars," Kel Thor said dismissively. "But only advanced ones win against the Rexian Empire. Prepare the first wave. We'll take their outer planets first, then move toward their homeworld. They'll surrender quickly once they see our power." The officer saluted and left to carry out his orders, while back on the Intrepid, Captain Cooper and his crew moved closer to what they thought was humanity's first friendly contact with alien life. They had no idea they were sailing directly toward humanity's greatest challenge, or that the ignored warnings of a blue-skinned alien named Zithrak would soon prove devastatingly accurate. The Rexian ships appeared suddenly above Earth's orbit, their massive hulls blocking sunlight and casting long shadows across the planet below. Earth's military leaders scrambled to respond, but they had no protocol for alien invasion. This was humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life, and it wasn't friendly. Commander Susan Grant stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defender, one of Earth's few space-capable warships. Originally built for protecting satellite networks, it now faced an enemy no human had ever imagined. "All stations report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. "Weapons online. Shields at maximum capacity," responded her tactical officer. The shields were experimental technology, never tested in actual combat. On the main view screen, more Rexian ships appeared, seemingly materializing from nowhere. Their hulls were dark purple with glowing blue lines running across them, like veins on a massive beast. "They're hailing us," said Communications Officer Ben Martinez. Susan straightened her uniform. On screen, the face that appeared wasn't what anyone expected. The Rexian Admiral Kel Thor had green-scaled skin with 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When he spoke, his translator converted his words to English, though his mouth movements didn't match. "Humans of Earth," he began, his voice carrying a metallic echo. "I am Admiral Kel Thor of the Rexian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender your military forces and prepare for integration into our empire. You have 6 hours to comply." The screen went black before Susan could respond. She turned to her second-in-command, Major Peter Blackwell, who looked as stunned as she felt. "Get me Earth Command," she said. Within an hour, every major leader on Earth had seen the Rexian message. In Washington, D.C., military leaders gathered in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon. General Howard Freeman, head of the newly formed Global Defense Initiative, addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we've prepared for since the Roswell incident in 1947. The room fell silent. Most people present knew the truth. A Rexian scout ship had crashed in New Mexico decades ago. The technology recovered had been reverse engineered, leading to major advances in Earth's defensive capabilities. But they had kept this secret from the public. We've prepared a response," General Freeman continued. "Major Blackwell will deliver it." Back on the U.S. Defender, Major Peter Blackwell stood before the communications array. His message would be broadcast to the entire Rexian fleet. "This is Major Peter Blackwell of Earth. Our response to your demand is simple. Come and take it." On the Rexian command ship, Admiral Kel Thor was furious. No species had ever rejected Rexian terms. It was unheard of. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Target their major cities first." The Rexian weapons officer hesitated. "Admiral, our scans show they have shield technology similar to our own." "Impossible," Kel Thor said. "They're a primitive species." "The scans are clear, sir, and they've launched fighters." Outside, Earth's defense force was small but determined. 50 spacecraft, hastily equipped with technology derived from the crashed Rexian ship, flew in formation against hundreds of Rexian vessels. What happened next shocked the Rexian commanders. The human fighters didn't follow standard attack patterns. Instead of maintaining formation, they scattered, each pilot flying unpredictably, making it difficult for Rexian targeting systems to lock on. "What are they doing?" demanded Kel Thor as he watched the battle unfold. Human pilots like Lieutenant Kelly Rogers and Captain Jeff Davis flew their ships in ways that defied conventional tactics. They looped, spun, and changed direction randomly, confusing the Rexian pilots who relied on predictable enemy movements. When the first Rexian destroyer exploded after a coordinated attack by just 3 human fighters, a chill went through the alien fleet. These weren't the actions of a primitive species. This was the fighting style of a species that had spent its entire history at war with itself, perfecting the art of combat in ways the Rexians had never imagined. In his distant monitoring station, Zithrak watched the initial battle with sad vindication. He opened his report and reread the section titled Human Combat Tactics. The words he had written years ago now played out before his eyes. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not follow rules or patterns. In battle, humans become unpredictable, innovative and terrifyingly effective. The battle that would later be known as First Contact had begun, and already the Rexians were learning a painful lesson about ignoring warnings. Lieutenant Alan Garcia flew his WASP fighter in a spiral pattern that no flight instructor would ever teach. His small ship darted between two massive Rexian cruisers, drawing their fire toward each other instead of him. Behind him, 4 more WASP pilots followed his lead, creating confusion in the enemy formation. "They can't track us if we don't fly in straight lines," Alan told his squadron through the radio. "Keep changing direction every few seconds." On his control panel, Alan noticed something odd. Every time he made a sudden course change, the Rexian ships took longer to adjust their aim than they should have. It was as if they couldn't react quickly enough to his unpredictable movements. "Command, this is WASP Leader," he called. "I think I found a weakness." The Rexians seemed to struggle with rapid course changes. Back at Earth Defense Headquarters, Dr. Natalie Winters listened to Alan's transmission with growing excitement. As head of the Alien Technology Research Team, she had studied the crashed Rexian ship for years. "It's their neural interfaces," she said to General Freeman. "The Rexians connect directly to their ships through a mental link. They think commands rather than pressing buttons." "And that's a weakness?" asked the general. "It could be." Natalie nodded. "Their systems are designed for efficiency, not adaptability. The neural pathways can't process random changes as quickly as a human pilot making split-second decisions." General Freeman immediately ordered all Earth fighters to adopt erratic flight patterns. Meanwhile, Dr. Winters and her team worked frantically to adapt the stolen Rexian shield technology to Earth's larger vessels. "The molecular structure of their shield emitters is similar to our experimental quantum fields," Natalie explained to her assistant, Greg Porter. "If we reverse the polarity and increase the power by 30%, we might be able to create a temporary shield around the defender." In space, the battle grew more intense. The Rexians, frustrated by their inability to hit the small human fighters, began targeting Earth's cities instead. Their energy weapons sliced through the atmosphere, heading toward Chicago. Captain Susan Grant maneuvered the U.S. Defender between the Rexian ships and Earth, knowing her vessel couldn't withstand such an attack. "Shields at maximum," she ordered, closing her eyes and waiting for the impact. To everyone's surprise, the Defender's hastily modified shields held against the Rexian weapons. Dr. Winters' team had succeeded in their adaptations faster than anyone thought possible. On the Rexian command ship, Admiral Kel Thor watched in disbelief as his attack failed to destroy the human vessel. "Impossible," he said. "Their technology is advancing during the battle. This defies all known development patterns." His science officer looked troubled. "Sir, I reviewed that Council warning file about humans. It specifically mentioned their ability to adapt technology at unprecedented rates. Why wasn't I informed of this before?" Kel Thor demanded. "The file was dismissed as exaggeration, Admiral." Kel Thor slammed his fist against his command chair. "Send in the second wave. We will overwhelm them with numbers." Another 100 Rexian ships appeared from hyperspace, joining the battle. The human defenders were now outnumbered 10-1, but they continued fighting with remarkable effectiveness. In his observation post, Zithrak watched the humans adapt their tactics and technology in real time. He pulled up the section of his report, titled Human Adaptability Under Pressure, and read it again. When faced with existential threats, humans demonstrate cognitive and technological adaptation rates up to 50 times faster than galactic standard. What takes other species generations to develop, humans can achieve in days or even hours when their survival depends on it. The Galactic Council had laughed at these numbers, calling them impossible. But as Zithrak watched human fighters executing maneuvers that grew more effective by the minute, and human scientists enhancing their technology during active combat, he knew his estimates had been correct. The Rexians had expected an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. What should have been a simple conquest was turning into the most challenging battle in Rexian history, all because they had ignored a warning about a species that thrived on adversity. Colonel Diana Mitchell stood in the underground war room, looking at the holographic display of the battle in orbit. After 24 hours of fighting, the human forces were still holding their own, but they needed an edge. As head of psychological warfare, Diana had an idea. The Rexians use a strict command structure, she explained to General Freeman. All orders flow from the top down. How does that help us? The general asked. Diana smiled. We can use it against them. Their communications follow predictable patterns. If we jam certain frequencies while allowing others through, we can create confusion in their ranks. The general nodded. Do it. Diana's team went to work. They identified the Rexian command frequencies and began a selective jamming operation. Meanwhile, they allowed lower-level communication channels to remain open, but inserted false information. In space, Rexian ship commanders suddenly found themselves receiving contradictory orders. Some heard to advance, others to retreat. Squadron leaders couldn't confirm commands with their superiors. The carefully organized Rexian attack began to fall apart. Meanwhile, a civilian named Jack Sullivan worked in a different part of the defense complex. Jack had been a hacker before the invasion, one of the best in the world. Now, the government needed his skills. He sat at a computer terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm in their network, he announced to the military officers watching over his shoulder. Their security is advanced but predictable. They don't expect someone to think the way humans do. Jack began altering navigation data, changing targeting parameters, and sending false alerts throughout the Rexian fleet. Ship captains received warnings of system failures that didn't exist. Weapons officers saw phantom human vessels on their screens. On the Rexian command ship, Admiral Kelthor struggled to regain control of his forces. What is happening? He demanded. Why are our ships breaking formation? We're experiencing communication disruptions, his officer reported, and strange anomalies in our systems. It appears the humans are attacking our information networks. How? Kelthor asked. They can't possibly understand our technology well enough to hack it. The science officer hesitated before answering. The warning file mentioned human information warfare capabilities. They apparently excel at finding weaknesses in systems they've never encountered before. Kelthor's face darkened with anger. Find a communication method they cannot disrupt. We must restore order to our fleet. But the humans were one step ahead. They had been studying Rexian communication patterns since the battle began, and each time the aliens switched to a new frequency or method, Diana's team was ready. In Earth's orbit, the battle began to shift. Human fighters, though vastly outnumbered, attacked with coordination and purpose, while Rexian ships fired at false targets or accidentally at each other. Some Rexian vessels retreated, believing they had received orders to pull back. It's working, Diana said, watching the holographic display as Rexian formations fell into chaos. They don't know how to fight when their command structure breaks down. Jack continued his digital assault, introducing new problems into the Rexian systems faster than they could fix old ones. Their technology is amazing, he said with grudging respect, but they built it assuming every species thinks like they do. They never planned for human creativity. In his observation post, Zithrak watched this new phase of the battle with fascination. He pulled up another section of his report, Human Psychological Warfare. The passage read, unlike most species who view war as a primarily physical conflict, humans understand the mental aspects of combat. They excel at creating confusion, fear, and disorder in enemy ranks. A human force will attack not just bodies and machines, but minds and morale. The Rexian military had never faced an enemy like this. They were accustomed to fighting species that followed predictable battle doctrines and responded to situations in logical ways. Now they faced humans, who changed strategies constantly and attacked in ways no Rexian had imagined possible. For the first time since the battle began, Admiral Kelthor felt something he had never experienced in combat before: doubt. The emergency session of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 200 species gathered to discuss the unexpected development. Humans were winning against the Rexian invasion force. "This is unprecedented," said the Voltar representative, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "No species has ever repelled a full Rexian assault." "We must intervene," insisted the Krell ambassador, pounding his stone-like fist on the table. "If humans defeat the Rexians, what will stop them from expanding beyond their system?" The report clearly stated their tendency toward territorial growth. Several council members nodded in agreement. The Rexians, for all their aggression, were at least a known quantity. Humans were an unknown variable. "I propose we send support to the Rexian fleet," said the Zarn representative. "Nothing obvious, but technical assistance to counter human hacking attempts." Votes were cast, and 17 species agreed to aid the Rexians. But before they could implement their plan, the chamber doors opened. A human walked in. Ambassador William Hayes had arrived on an experimental faster-than-light ship just hours earlier. He stood tall in his blue diplomatic uniform, his gray hair and weathered face showing the strain of recent days. The council members fell silent, many seeing a human in person for the first time. "Members of the Galactic Council," William began, his voice clear and strong. "I come as Earth's first ambassador. We did not start this conflict, but we will finish it." He paused, looking around the room. "We know some of you plan to help the Rexians. Before you do, understand this. Earth extends friendship to any civilization that recognizes our right to exist. But those who support our invaders will face the same resistance the Rexians now face." The chamber erupted in angry shouts. The council leader banged his gavel for order. "You dare threaten the council?" demanded the Krell ambassador. William shook his head. "Not a threat. A promise. Humanity has survived thousands of years of our own wars. We've practiced fighting more than any species in this room. We don't want to fight you, but we will if forced." From the back of the chamber, a slender figure approached. The Mirani ambassador, Trellnan, stood beside William. "My people have suffered under Rexian expansion for generations," Trellnan said, her voice soft but firm. "We vote to support the humans." "Preposterous," shouted the Zarn representative. "Is it?" asked Trellnan. "The Rexians have conquered 12 worlds in the past century. How many more before they reach yours? The humans offer alliance and respect. The Rexians offer only submission." Other representatives began to murmur among themselves. The balance was shifting. Meanwhile, on a diplomatic vessel near Earth, Captain Lisa Turner received Trellnan's secret transmission with vital intelligence about Rexian fleet movements. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer in space, Lisa had been working to establish contact with other species since the battle began. "The Mirani have sent the location of the Rexian supply lines," she told General Freeman over a secure channel. "And 7 other species are now offering assistance." "Can we trust them?" the general asked. "The Mirani have fought the Rexians for decades," Lisa replied. "They have the most to gain from a Rexian defeat. I believe we can trust them." In the council chamber, more species began to side with humanity. The Voltar changed their vote, then the Saroni and the Bleen. Zithrak watched from his seat, amazed at the human ambassador's effect on the council. He pulled up another section of his report, Human Diplomatic Capabilities. It read, "Despite their warlike history, or perhaps because of it, humans excel at forming alliances. They instinctively understand the balance of power and offer terms that benefit both parties. When faced with a common enemy, humans can turn former adversaries into allies with remarkable speed." As William Hayes continued his speech, outlining a vision of cooperation rather than conquest, more council members moved to support Earth. By session's end, 23 species had pledged assistance against the Rexians. The tide wasn't just turning in space, It was turning across the galaxy. General Edward Mills stood in the war room, studying the holographic display showing Earth, the Rexian fleet, and now the positions of their new alien allies. With Murani intelligence and support from other species, they finally had a complete picture of the enemy's forces. "It's time to take the fight to them," he said to his officers. "Operation Thunderbolt begins in 6 hours." Across the globe, military bases prepared for the largest coordinated attack in human history. Ships were loaded with new weapons developed based on Rexian technology. Fighter pilots studied the weaknesses in Rexian ships that the Murani had revealed. In his laboratory at the Global Defense Initiative, researcher Kevin Bennett made a breakthrough that could change everything. He had been studying Rexian biology from samples collected from damaged enemy ships. "Their hearing range is different from ours," he explained to General Mills over video call. "They can detect frequencies up to 50 kHz, well beyond human hearing. And their brain activity shows extreme discomfort at specific frequencies." "Are you saying we can hurt them with sound?" the general asked. Kevin nodded excitedly. "Not just hurt them. The right frequency could completely disorient them, maybe even temporarily paralyze their nervous systems. It's like an extreme version of how fingernails on a chalkboard affect humans." General Mills immediately ordered the development of sonic weapons calibrated to these frequencies. Within hours, human fighters were being equipped with devices that could emit the debilitating sound. Operation Thunderbolt began with a surprise attack, not on the main Rexian fleet, but on their supply lines. Human ships, guided by Murani information, struck at the vulnerable support vessels bringing fuel and ammunition to the invasion force. Lieutenant Amy Wilson led the first wave in her newly modified fighter. "Remember, get close before activating the sonic weapons," she told her squadron. "They only work at short range." The Rexian supply ships never saw the attack coming. As human fighters closed in, they activated the sonic weapons. Inside the Rexian vessels, crews collapsed in pain, their nervous systems overwhelmed by frequencies their bodies couldn't tolerate. With minimal resistance, the humans disabled or destroyed 80% of the Rexian supply chain in less than an hour. On the Rexian command ship, Admiral Kel Thor received the news with growing horror. "Our supply lines are cut," his officer reported. "And the human weapons, they affect our crews physically. They're using our biology against us." Kelthor's face showed a mixture of rage and disbelief. How could they develop such weapons so quickly? They couldn't possibly have known about our auditory sensitivity. "The humans have allies now," the officer replied. "Several species are sharing intelligence with them." Kelthor sent an urgent message to the Rexian homeworld, requesting reinforcements. The response came quickly and was not what he expected. "Request denied," read the message from the Rexian Emperor. "Hold position with current forces. Avoid further escalation." For the first time in 3,000 years of Rexian conquest, their leadership was considering withdrawal. The Emperor had reviewed the updated information about humans and decided the risk was too great. In his observation post, Zithrak watched the human counteroffensive with amazement. He had predicted their adaptability and their combat skills, but even he was surprised by the speed with which they had turned the situation around. He added a new note to his report. "Human innovation in warfare seems to have no limits. When faced with a biological advantage their enemy possesses, humans will find a way to turn that advantage into a weakness." As Operation Thunderbolt continued, human and allied forces systematically dismantled the Rexian fleet's ability to fight. Without supplies and facing weapons they had no defense against, the mighty Rexian invasion force began to crumble. In the Rexian war room, Admiral Kelthor faced the unthinkable question: how to retreat with minimal losses. The conquest of Earth, which should have been a simple operation, had turned into the greatest military disaster in Rexian history. All because they had ignored a warning about a species that turned out to be unlike any other in the galaxy. Dr. Richard Foster walked quickly through the halls of the Global Defense Initiative. As head of Earth's Xenopolitical Relations Department, he had spent the last 3 days developing a plan that many would consider crazy. Now he needed to convince General Freeman and the world leaders to accept it. You want to offer peace terms? General Freeman looked at Richard like he had lost his mind. We're winning. The Rexians are on the run. Richard nodded. Exactly. We should offer terms while we have the advantage, but before we destroy them completely. Why show mercy to an enemy that came to conquer us? Asked the Secretary of Defense. Because a defeated enemy becomes tomorrow's enemy again, Richard explained. But an enemy that saves face today might become tomorrow's partner. The room fell silent as military and political leaders considered his words. Richard continued, I've studied the Rexian culture. They value strength but also honor. If we offer terms that recognize their power while securing our safety, they might accept. If we push for complete victory, they'll fight to the last ship and hold a grudge for generations. After hours of debate, Earth's leaders agreed to Richard's plan. They would offer the Rexians peace terms that allowed them to withdraw with honor while recognizing Earth's sovereignty and its right to join the galactic community. Ambassador Christina Russell was chosen to deliver the terms. Her diplomatic shuttle approached the Rexian command ship under a flag of truce, escorted by 20 human fighters as a reminder of Earth's strength. On the Rexian ship, Admiral Kelthor was surprised by the human request for a meeting. His officers advised against it. It could be a trap, his security chief warned. If they wanted to destroy this ship, they could have done so already, Kelthor replied. Their sonic weapons would disable our crew in minutes. No, they want something else. Bring the human ambassador aboard. Christina Russell stood tall as she entered the Rexian command center. She wore a formal blue uniform with gold trim, projecting both authority and respect. Admiral Kelthor, she began, I bring terms from Earth and its allies. Kelthor's 4 yellow eyes narrowed. Terms. You presume to dictate terms to the Rexian Empire. Christina remained calm. Not dictate. Propose. Earth offers you an honorable conclusion to this conflict. She handed him a data pad containing the proposed Treaty of Luna. As Kelthor read, his expression changed from anger to surprise to thoughtful consideration. The terms were not what he expected. Earth demanded recognition as a sovereign world with the right to defend its system. The Rexians would withdraw and acknowledge Earth's membership in the galactic community. But there were no demands for reparations, no humiliating conditions, no territorial concessions beyond Earth's own system. These terms are unexpected, Kelthor admitted. Earth doesn't seek the destruction of the Rexian Empire, Christina explained. We seek only our place among the stars. Today we are enemies, but tomorrow we could be trading partners. In his observation post, Zithrak watched this diplomatic exchange with fascination. He had predicted humans would fight fiercely when attacked, but he hadn't anticipated this level of political wisdom. He added to his report, human pragmatism may be their most surprising trait. Even in victory, they consider the future. They understand that today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally if treated with respect rather than humiliation. The Galactic Council members who had voted to help the Rexians were shocked by the human approach. They had expected Earth to demand crushing terms if they won, perhaps even counter-invasion of Rexian territories. I don't understand, said the Krell ambassador. They have the advantage. Why don't they use it to destroy their enemy? Zithrak smiled slightly. Because they're looking beyond this battle. The humans are playing a longer game than anyone expected. Back on the Rexian command ship, after consulting with his emperor, Admiral Kelthor made a decision that would change galactic history. The Rexian Empire accepts your terms, he told Christina. We will withdraw from Earth space and recognize your world as a sovereign power. The Treaty of Luna would be signed the next day, marking humanity's official entrance into galactic politics. 5 years after the Rexian conflict, Earth had transformed. Ships from a dozen alien worlds now docked at the newly built orbital stations. Markets sold goods from across the galaxy. Humans worked alongside aliens, learning and teaching in equal measure. Captain Nickel Daniels stood on the bridge of the Harmony, the first joint human-alien exploration vessel. Its crew included humans, Mirani, Voltar, and even 2 Rexians who had chosen to join the Terran Alliance. "Course laid in for the Andromeda sector, Captain," said her Mirani navigator, Sile. "Proceed at cruising speed," Nickel ordered. She felt a surge of pride as the magnificent ship accelerated smoothly. 5 years ago, humans had never left their solar system. Now they explored the stars alongside the very aliens who once doubted them. The Terran Alliance had grown to include 17 worlds, most of them former subjects of the Rexian Empire. After seeing Earth successfully resist the Rexians, these planets had sought protection and partnership with humans. Earth offered technology, defense, and fair trade without demanding submission. On the Galactic Council, human representative Laura Bennett took her seat for the day's session. As Earth's first council delegate, she had worked tirelessly to build relationships with other species. "The human delegation calls for a vote on the Mutual Defense Agreement," Laura announced. Council members activated their voting systems. When the results appeared on the main screen, Laura smiled. The measure had passed by a wide margin. Even the Rexian representative had voted in favor, a sign of how much had changed. After their defeat at Earth, the Rexian Empire had undergone its own transformation. The Emperor had been replaced, and the new leadership sought cooperation rather than conquest. In a quiet corner of the council building, Zithrak sat with a human diplomat named Paul Johnson. Though elderly now, Zithrak's blue skin still had a healthy glow. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you wrote your report?" Paul asked. Zithrak shook his head. "I predicted that humans would resist effectively if attacked. I did not foresee that you would change the very structure of galactic politics." Paul laughed. "We tend to have that effect wherever we go." Zithrak nodded thoughtfully. "I've been updating my report on humans. The council actually reads it now." "What's your latest conclusion?" Paul asked. "That perhaps the most dangerous trait of humans is not their adaptability, ingenuity, or even their capacity for violence when threatened," Zithrak said. "It is their ability to transform enemies into allies and challenges into opportunities." He showed Paul the data pad containing his updated report. The final page displayed statistics on technological growth, diplomatic agreements, and cultural exchanges, all showing sharp increases since Earth joined the galactic community. "The Rexians invaded Earth thinking they would gain one planet," Zithrak continued. "Instead, they lost their empire while Earth gained 17 allies. The species that voted to help the Rexians against you now seek trade agreements with you. The council that dismissed my warnings now follows your leadership on security matters." In orbit above Earth, a small Rexian trade vessel approached the main station. Its captain, once a junior officer in the invasion fleet, now carried luxury goods to sell in Earth's markets. The station's traffic control cleared him for docking without hesitation. Former enemies now conducted business without fear. Meanwhile, in schools across Earth, children learned about alien cultures alongside human history. In universities, human and alien scientists worked together on problems neither could solve alone. In homes, some humans even welcomed alien friends for dinner, sharing food and stories. The Rexians had indeed paid a price for ignoring the warning about humans, but that price wasn't just military defeat, it was the loss of their old way of life. The species that had built an empire through force now learned to build relationships through cooperation, following the unexpected example of the humans they had once dismissed as primitive. As Captain Nickel Daniels watched her mixed crew working seamlessly together on the Harmony's bridge, she reflected that perhaps the greatest victory wasn't winning the war. It was winning the peace that followed.